I began studying architecture towards the end of 2016 and I finally graduated in 2019 last year. Now some of you watching will already know this. I used to share some of my architecture work in these videos. It was challenging to balance both a YouTube channel and a degree in a subject that is often noted as being very work intensive, but here I am now. I have finished the degree and I'm here making this video showing you my work. This is my final year project that I will be showing you today. I have all of my work on the computer, but for the purpose of this video, I went and had it all reprinted. There was a lot involved when it came to this project. I won't be able to provide all of the context that is necessary to fully understand the project, but I still think it's important for me to give you an idea of how this work came about. So in the description of this video, I have written a brief introduction. I advise that you read this now so that you have a better understanding of the project I am showing you, but you don't have to. You can just simply admire these images for what they are. So I'm going to begin by showing you some of the conceptual drawings that I had created right at the start of the project. At this early stage, I didn't have much of an idea for what this bridge was going to be, and so I started to use my imagination and create some pencil drawings that depicted this occupied bridge. You've likely noticed already that this was edited in Photoshop, the sky and the water here was added in digitally, and as I show you more of these images, you'll see that my architecture work is often a combination of elements drawn by hand and then manipulated digitally. This here is another drawing of the bridge. This time I have drawn the bridge on site, which was on the River Thames in London, so this variation of the bridge was influenced by the previous drawings. You can see these towers here, which remained throughout the entire project, and whilst I had drawn this bridge from imagination, I had used some Google Earth screenshots as reference for me to draw the surrounding environment. This drawing shows a view of this bridge from high above. Again, I would have used Google Earth and then drawn in the bridge. Here it all looks a little flat. I think I was just testing out various ideas. I was relating to the old London Bridge that was a big influence on the project, hence why I decided to use London as my site. I was in a unique situation on this course because most students were given an existing site which came with the necessary context for their design, whereas I was tasked with developing my own context because the building was going to be situated on this non-existent bridge. And so right from the start of the project, I considered this bridge to be quite theoretical. It was always my intention to keep the context of the bridge very vague. After all, the bridge wasn't my final design, it was the building. So for the sake of continuity, I did print this image out, but it was reduced down in scale to the point where you couldn't really see anything on camera. It didn't do the image justice because this was originally printed out at size A1. So here is a high resolution image. This was an axonometric drawing that I had drawn over 3 A2 pieces of paper, and then I edited it in Photoshop. It had taken me a few months to finally put this image together alongside the other work, but it really set the tone for the project. So if you are familiar with architecture, you'll know that site analysis is a vital part of the design process. I had to take a trip to London and check out this location where the bridge was going to be across the River Thames. So here is an overall site analysis sheet that I had created, and you can see some of what you usually see on these types of presentations. We have a site map here. This again was produced in Photoshop. I also think some other software was used, such as CAD and SketchUp. I would rely on them a lot. Then there is this diagram here which shows either side of the River Thames. This is where the bridge was going to be. There are some photos, some screenshots from Google Earth, and also a site model there which I had made in SketchUp. You'll notice that a lot of my presentations are quite condensed. There's rarely any blank space, and that's just a personal preference of mine. I know that some people might see that as being overwhelming or hard to read, but I just like having a lot to look at, and I'm the same with the artwork that I create as well. Now, seeing as I had this bridge which went to either side of the river, I decided to create a separate sheet which focused in on each of those locations. Most of my work is created in Photoshop. Here I used Google Earth, SketchUp and Digimap to create these visuals. There is a site map, a site section, and some photos that I had taken when I visited. These were originally in colour, but I made the decision to keep everything in grayscale towards the end of the project, because I wanted to keep everything consistent and I had a lot of pencil drawings on there. This is the same as the previous sheet, except it's for the other side of the river. So now it's time to take a look at the actual design of the building. Again, it was a 3D printing facility that was situated on this occupied bridge in London. And there was a lot of work that went into this. I'll show you some development towards the end, but for now let's take a look at these images. A design is usually presented in the form of sections, plans, elevations and other visual images, but I'm going to start by showing you the elevations because then you can have a look at the building externally. So here is the east elevation, and you can see the printing facility next to one of the bridge's towers. The decision was made to push the building into the tower to fix it within the designed context of the bridge. There is also this large scale 3D printer attached there which sits in front of the building. On the south elevation, you can see the crane and the external stairway. Whilst the aesthetic of the build was meant to complement the bridge and suit the function of the building, I was also inspired by the Lloyd's building in London, designed by Richard Rogers. There is this crane here as well which would transport products being made, and in addition to that, there were other distribution methods put in place through the development of the building. This is the west elevation, where the building faces inwards to the bridge. These shadows which are present on the elevations help to understand some of its form. I believe this was also taken from a model created in SketchUp, but I also included some CAD drawings and pencil work in there. So now let's take a look at some floor plans, and there are 8 levels in this building due to there being an open void in the central tower section. Within this void there are these platforms which store drones. Yes, I know this all sounds quite fictional, but within the design I had incorporated this drone delivery system that would transport products. All of these decisions were made in consideration of the brief. Again, I can't give you all of the context that you need in order to fully understand my reasoning for these things, but let's have a look at these. So instead of me talking you through each one of these separately, I'll just cycle through them here. You can see that I refer to these floors as levels, and each plan comes with a key that indicates what is present on each level. Most of these lower levels were dedicated to production and distribution, with the higher up levels being residential. There is a family who live and operate in this facility, and so most of the design decisions were made in consideration of their needs. There is a lot to consider through the design process, which often leads to this never-ending development. In terms of how these plans appear visually, I had taken the same approach when creating these as I did with most of the images depicting this design. I would always take advantage of different software, Photoshop, SketchUp, CAD, and then of course I would incorporate some traditional drawing. It was in my final year when I had really developed this consistent working process when it came to creating these images, one that not only complemented my love for drawing by hand, but also allowed me to work digitally and present my work more professionally. But now let's take a look at some standalone visuals which depict the design. This here is an overall site plan that shows the building in its location on the bridge. The bridge continues to be illustrated in a way that is quite conceptual, whilst more specific intention is brought to the design of the printing facility. This looks like it was taken from Google Earth. Again, there is a lot of layering going on here. Now here we have an internal view of the building. This is directly from SketchUp, and here I had adjusted the field of view so that I was able to achieve this very wide angle view of that internal void. Also, with the inclusion of shadows, it creates an interesting image. I'm not going to go too in depth in terms of materials and construction, but around the exterior of the building there was this bracelet system that added to the overall aesthetic. This is a wide perspective view of the building within its context. Here you can start to see a lot more of the surrounding environment illustrated in pencil, whilst most of the focus is brought to the building itself in the centre. These images always appeared quite dystopian, which I decided to roll with. It also related to my personal drawing style and interest in what I tend to draw anyways, so that likely informed a lot of this project. You can see here how the image gradually loses detail and fades off at each end. I wanted to create a final image that would tie everything together and communicate this design. This is a sectional perspective that I created towards the end of the project. Here you can see the building from a person's point of view, as if they are stood on the bridge looking up at the facility in operation. I have also taken an angled section through there so that you can see the interior whilst still being able to see the exterior. Here we have the drones flying around and the crane transporting products. There is also the surrounding environment which has been drawn in detail using pencil. This is the image which tied up the project towards the end. In addition to this, there is a lot more work, but it mainly comes in the form of technical documents, stuff that you're probably not going to be too interested in seeing. I do have quite a lot of development work though, so I'll put that on screen now. These are mostly previous iterations and ideas. If you are familiar with architecture, maybe you study it yourself, you'll know that you're always making changes and revisiting your design. It's just part of the process. So that was my final year project. I know that a lot of you have been wanting to see some of my architecture work for some time now, so I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, then please give the video a like, subscribe with the notifications on to stay up to date and never miss a video in the future. If you'd like to support the channel further, then do consider checking out the Patreon page where I create some exclusive content. With all that being said, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.